We have also engaged one of the multilateral financial institutions operating from Washington, actually the private sector arm of the World Bank, to join with us in working out that system for us. Because with us, I should say, not for us. It's very important. Because they have had the experience in many countries of the world who have embarked on that program. And I met with them 2 weeks ago. And the Vice President actually came to Trinidad to establish our own interests. So I could tell you that's on the agenda in a very serious way during the course of the next year.
If I could just add, it's not my portfolio necessarily, but the government has just moved to implement the single electronic window, as you know. And I know people like Mr. Laughlin might be a little bit skeptical, having gone through, like myself over the last 15, 20 years, the various ARGRICULTURE systems that really have never come to fruition. But I do believe that with the proper will from the government, which I think there is to get that going, that will considerably ease the ability to do business with regard to the ports and customs and so on. So that's also another enabler to doing business in Trinidad and Tobago.
Let's go to a text message question now that has come in. If I can see the text message from our producer, there we have it. First question, why did minimum wage not raise? What is the minimum maximum commercial loan limit per business venture? And a third question is, what about the sugar workers' sweet hand loan interest from the ADB that was due to them? So, gentlemen, if you could touch on some of those issues that were raised there via text.
Well, the minimum wage is a matter for review. We recognize that it has not been changed for some time, and that the Minimum Wages Board had deliberated on this matter and had recommended a certain wage. We are actually continuing in our deliberations on this matter, and we were not complete with the full assessment of the implication and cost of so doing. And hence we decided at this point in time to continue our deliberations on the matter. I hope that we can deal with it quickly. All the matters could not have been dealt with. I tried as far as possible to deal with all the outstanding matters, but recognizing that we have in fact delivered a budget within 3 months of being in office was quite a task. May I take the opportunity at this time to say a special word of appreciation to the staff of the Ministry of Finance who work long hours on many nights to meet tight deadlines. But we will continue in that process.
One of the questions that came in there perhaps cross-cuts both your ministries, which is the issue of the former Caroni workers and what was referred to as their ADB loans. Perhaps you can talk, Minister, a little bit about your plans for some of that Caroni acreage in terms of food production. And Minister, maybe you could comment on that question with respect to the financial implications for those workers. But briefly, because in a minute we'll be taking calls from the public.
Okay, very quickly, with regard to the Caroni lands, as you know, the Estate Management Development Corporation had been charged or vested with the assets of Caroni. And only very recently has the EMBD been moved back from the Ministry of Finance, and it was set up really as a special purpose vehicle, moved back from the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Food Production. Now, unfortunately, a lot of very fertile arable lands had been taken by the previous government for the purpose of putting down housing, and some of them may be lost simply because of the fact that underground infrastructure has already been put down on those lands. When I say underground, I mean cabling and water and sewage and so on. So those have been lost. But we put a halt to the existing expansion of housing on agricultural land until we can make a proper assessment as to how we can harness that and bring it back into agricultural use. One of the issues we've got is the fact that many of the 2-acre plots that were given out to farmers are sometimes either remote from where they live, so they're subject to the issues again of predial larceny because the plots are 15, 20 miles away from where they live. The other issue, of course, is that it's taken so long for the lands to have been given out that a lot of people are old, they're no longer able, they're not prepared to go back to the lands. So how do we as a government bring those very productive, fertile lands back into agriculture and back into arable use? And one of the things that we're talking about and engaging the 2-acre farmers with is the idea of cooperatives. So we bring the land under a cooperative, and those who are not interested in farming themselves will be able to hand the land over to cooperative and be able to receive some remuneration on a monthly or annual basis for the use of those lands. In addition, the fact that it would be a much larger parcel will allow us to be able to mechanize the production rather than it being simply labor intensive.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we'll be taking more questions from our live audience as well as phone calls. This is the Ministry of Finance Post-Budget Forum, an opportunity for both stakeholders who are with us here live in our foyer here at the Financial Tower, and of course you, our television audience, with text messages and the phone calls when we come back. Sam.
That's right, Francesca, and that number is 627-3760. When we come back from this break, we want your calls. Welcome back to CNC3's live coverage of the Post-Budget Forum by the Ministry of Finance in downtown Port of Spain, facing the issues turning the country around. That's the theme of this year's 2011 budget. We go now to Francesca Hawkins, who will be taking your calls.
Thank you very much. This is an interactive forum, and now we'd like to welcome our caller from Diego Martin and inviting him or her to pose the question directly to the ministers. Good evening. Caller from Diego Martin, good evening.
Good afternoon. Yes, I have two questions.
Yes, go right ahead. Perhaps you can speak up a little bit and direct your question.
I have a question for the Agriculture Minister. So, Minister, it has been said that there are many farmers who have received loans from the ADB and have not been paid. I don't know if it's just talk or if it has happened, but you said you met with all the farmers, all the stakeholders, and then until before you have decided that agriculture can be viable. I would like to know if there are farmers who have not repaid their loans, is still eligible to register and get loans from the ADB. That is your question, Mr. Agriculture Minister, and this question is to the Finance Minister. Once congratulated on your budget, sir, to start with, but I would like to ask you that if all these monies is pumped into agriculture, which you said that you want to diversify from oil and gas down the road, maybe 10, 20 years down the road, and can be viable. If it doesn't work after the first 10 years, how are you going to pull up on that?
Thank you very much, caller. The question there on the agriculture sector, Minister Barrett, specific question was the issue of loan financing for farmers with the Agricultural Development Bank. Could you address that issue, please?
Yes, there are indeed many outstanding loans and loans that have not been paid. As with any bank, there is generally a portfolio of loans that's reported as bad debts, effectively, and eventually written off if it can't be collected. When the Minister of Finance talked about injecting $75 million into the Agricultural Development Bank and also looking at reducing rates, it was on the basis that the Agricultural Development Bank would be completely restructured. And I think that that bank has been allowed to run in the manner it's been run for far too long, and possibly certain checks and balances have not been in place or has not been fulfilled. So one of the conditions under which further funds are going to be put in there and loans are going to be granted at the rates of between 3 and 5% is the basis that the bank will be restructured, the loan portfolio would be looked at, the risk analyses will be done based on existing portfolios and on new requests.
We have a caller from Tobago now. Good evening. Caller from Tobago.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. You can address your question directly.
My question is to the Minister. I realize that nothing much was said concerning Tobago. I don't know if it's because the Chief Secretary has been emphasizing of the monotony of the Tobago House of Assembly. But what I was hoping to hear happening is some sort of decrease in the price of transportation to and from Tobago, Trinidad to Tobago. Now, this price has been affecting a lot of persons, especially persons who have to go down to Trinidad on a weekly basis to study and so on and so on. I remember the previous government did some decreasing in the prices. So I want to know what are your thoughts on that and what are the plans for that?
Thank you very much. Caller from Tobago asking Minister specifically issues of transport and the high cost of inter-island travel between Trinidad and Tobago.
There was a specific proposal to improve the jetty services and the terminals both in Tobago and in Trinidad. That was mentioned in the budget. But beyond that, there has been a full discussion as to the development of a different approach to Tobago's future. And I did have meetings with Mr. London on that matter, and we both agreed that shortly after the budget, and we will then get together to design an approach. I believe Tobago has far more potential, notwithstanding its size in today's new global economy, and that Tobago has not been able to realize its potential because it has relied on its development based on subventions. We have increased the subventions in terms of levels, but to me that's not the big issue right now. So I appreciate the research, and I know Dr. Joe may have some views on this. He has been an advocate for some time on this issue.
We have another caller from Tobago now, so perhaps this would be an opportunity for Dr. Job to comment as well. Caller from Tobago, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. Go right ahead and ask your question. Good evening.
Yes, I want to talk about the computers that were promised to children and them. Do I feel it's best for you to open a computer class every year and the children and go and study, then to give these children the computer to bring home? Because they're just coming to download music and all kind of thing on the computer. And some of these villages have no current, so the children want to use the computer on.
Thank you very much. Caller from Tobago asking a question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. Caller from Tobago asking about the question of laptops and expressing specific concerns about the kind of content that is accessible to young people through the laptops. So, Minister, perhaps you could talk a little bit about that and explain exactly what is happening with respect to Tobago and the laptop initiative.
Well, very quickly, the issue of information has been identified as the main cause in the world between rich nations and poor nations. And within countries, information has been seen as the major dividing factor. If people have access to information, that they are more likely to exploit the opportunities ahead of them. So the computer proposal was really linked to a wider proposal of having our young people, and my friend who spoke about the young people were recognized to give them the opportunity to bridge that information gap. Now, having put it into place, there is a lot more that needs to be done in terms of the school's capability to make maximum use of this new opportunity. And I know that the Minister of Education has, in fact, made some statements on that matter. So the caller is right. We need to do more to make better use of the information.
If I could just add quickly, there are, however, controls over the type of software that's available on there and the type of websites that children will be able to access on these computers. So it's not a free-for-all that you can go in there and access pornography or music on certain types of music and so on. There are controls, and the laptops actually come with a certain specific type of software relevant to a child at that age?
We are live here at the Financial Tower at the Eric Williams Financial Complex in Port of Spain. This